Thank you very much for sharing some visions and ideas and thoughts that an artist can have in his studio or working on artworks, because this is a question that people often ask me, and so those are very difficult questions to give an answer to, but I take you on a little journey with some images to try to understand what's going on when we create. Now, why are some artworks so significant? Well, this artwork, I guess that everybody in the room knows what it is, so it doesn't even need to be explained. It's Michelangelo's, and it's God creates Adam. So Michelangelo paints Adam, the first man created by God, and you see the two hands that will never, they reach towards each other, but the two fingers do not touch. There's this very magical space in between the two fingers. I think that magical space is important for an artist's vision and an artist's space in which he creates, because I think humankind always tends to want to go towards perfection and to understand what is beyond us, the world we cannot understand, the other world, the world that people we loved and we cherished have gone to, or the world where, this unknown world where we all come from. So I think Michelangelo asked himself this question, which is a very logical question, especially at that era when art was dominated. Most of the commissions were done by the church, and Michelangelo painted this in the Chapelle Sistine, sorry, which was ordered by the Pope for more private use, and over the centuries it turned out that thousands of visitors went to see this work of art, have been fascinated by it, and I leave it to you to know why it is so fascinating and why it actually makes the human mind so unique, and why our environment inspires artists whenever artists have worked or lived. What is important to them is their environment. So this is also an image that shows very well the environment in which Michelangelo worked. And now we're going to go to the next slide. So if artists are very sensitive to their environment, it means that a contemporary artist, which I am today, I'm very sensitive and, you know, very unconsciously influenced by everything I see, everything I hear, and by all the information we get nowadays on so many, the speed of progress is so enormous. In a couple of hundred years' time, we have gone a very long way. And the artist's thoughts are the following. The artist is unconsciously inspired by all these kind of images he sees on computers, on you know, DNA, scientific research, all kind of human inventions including the computer, which makes the artist think. Artists use computers a lot, to an extent even where at some point in Spain they had invented a polyphonic, which was sort of a computer that could actually test songs and be able to tell in advance which song would be popular or which song would not be popular, and it was called hit songs and popular songs. And actually it worked, and so they could decide beforehand which song would become very popular. Now my question is, now artists of course have always been influenced by their environment. We can think after Michelangelo of Vermeer with the optical devices in the Netherlands, Leonardo da Vinci, all the artists, all the contemporary artists are preoccupied by that idea. Now, of course, all the miracles of creation, now we are a couple of hundred years later than the first image of Michelangelo, where God created mankind and where the painter depicted God. Now we are at an era where man can create mankind with test tube babies, and very soon maybe even without any human being to carry a baby. We don't know, but anyhow, we are at a moment in time where we can do this. So in a very small period of time, artists are confronted with this. Now on the right is a picture, a print I made of, like I imagined a DNA structure which is unique to each human being. And on the left is a collage of my granddaughter. Under it is the Queensboro Bridge, and it's like the construction, the engineering, and then on top of it, it's a New York Times that says, well, this is the first baby that was born maybe in 10 years or 20 years without anything. We just create a baby that we can decide beforehand if it has blue eyes, brown eyes, if it's like this or that. So the danger, the progress of science, but also the dangers of it. And that made me think about how an artist feels inside of that, using myself, of course, lots of computers. And I thought, well, if we render ourselves to the decision of a machine to tell us, even if we program it in advance, we program computers, we program them to say, well, this is going to be, you know, you just make a choice like all the songs, and this is going to be a fantastic artwork, or we let them make all the artwork. Now, there have been some really impressive outcomes of the last Sony annual shareholders meeting that everybody can watch on YouTube, and which is very interesting, 2011, where they say by 2013 that we can build a computer that has the capacity of an entire human brain, and in 2042 we can build a computer that has the capacity of the brain of the entire human species. So when you think about that, you think, well, and what about art? Because how could we, in this kind of situation, imagine what art will become if we can let computers decide what will be fashionable, or is it still so that art will speak for itself at some point? Because art, some works of art have been famous over the centuries, as we saw in the first slide, and some works of art are very fashionable, but then disappear totally of, you know, the globe, and 100 years later nobody even talks about them anymore. Or the opposite way around, artists that were absolutely not famous when they made the artwork, and they become famous afterwards. And that happened to many, many artists. So I think that, first of all, an artist does not know when he makes an artwork, well, now I'm making a genius artwork, and everybody will go look at it for the next 300 years. You don't know. I don't think, you know, you can tell that an artist knows that. Second of all, artists, when they create, I think they are suddenly in a special space where they are in a sort of space in time completely isolated from the world, in which this mystery of creation takes place, where, as a matter of fact, you could say you feel that you are in a divine world, that there's some divinity. And as Michelangelo would say, it's not me who paints, but it's an angel at the end of my paintbrush. So it's a little bit, those kind of situations can absolutely happen, but believe me, most of the time it's very hard work. So. Now, the topography, I called it, of the human mind, because I'm coming to the next slide of Senator Fulbright's, the unthinkable. So if we imagine that we can build a computer which has the capacity of the entire human brain, that we can program it to make art to be superior to man, we have stepped from God to man, men who can create man, and now we are going to a machine that will, well, what will it do? And I'm letting you read this text about the unthinkable. And this leads me to Senator Fulbright as an incredible, the feathers of my mind, I call it. Should science know or begin to shape what is found to be significant for a work of art? So, you know, this is my question, and I leave it to you to answer this for yourself. And ask our souls over time if it's not our humanity that encourages each and every one of us to recognize what is significant in all man's ideas and work. Now, I switch to Senator Fulbright's Unthinkable because we go back to the 1900s in Paris at the Universal Exhibition, the World Fair, where there was the conquest of space, the vertical space with the Eiffel Tower. This was the turn of the century, almost 100 years ago, a little bit more than 100 years ago, sorry. But at each turn of the century, we assist to this incredible explosion of progress. So we go back in time. And why do we go back in time? Because at this Universal Art Exhibition, there was a sculptor, a French sculptor, who made a lot of money, earned very well his living, and said, I have an idea. I want to build a village for artists for all over the world so that there will be mutual understanding, exchange of ideas. And he took, it's on the right, you see a round pavilion, it's called the Pavilion of the Bordeaux Wines, and he built what he called the Beehive La Ruche, and it's a colony for artists in Paris where artists gathered, Chagall, Soutine, Modigliani from all over the world came to stay and work in this beehive. So Alfred Boucher had created his ideal village. Here's the entrance. I can show you this because I'm a resident in this artist colony. And Brancusi lived here, and there's like a list of very famous artists. When he built this village, he had no idea that the artists that would come there, that would be very poor, that most of the time would come from lots of Eastern countries with absolutely no money, and the only thing they could say is when they arrived at the station in Paris, they said, La Ruche, and they would go to their, the Ruche. So this is a very, very singular building, and I'm just showing you some pictures. Again, this is on the left, the sculptor Alfred Boucher, and why I'm showing you these pictures, and he was also a fireman, which is funny, and there's this, other sculpture in the garden with hands. I'm showing you always things with hands because I think, well, as I asked one of my colleagues there in La Ruche, who is a sculptor, well, what do you think when you create? What's happening to your mind when you make a sculpture? And he answered, he said, there's this very old sentence, and it's Anaxagore de Clazomène, and he says, a man thinks because he has one hand. And when you are an artist, it starts often by drawing or by your hand, or it's not the brain, it's your hand. And I thought it was very interesting to record that information. But what I wanted to say with this is that actually Senator Fulbright had the same idea of building a community of people from all over the world that could exchange ideas, of mutual understanding. And what Alfred Boucher on a small level has attained is that with this artist colony that exists for 100 years, actually it produced artists like Chagall, Brancusi, a whole list of very famous artists that he didn't know he would produce. Well, Senator Fulbright had a similar kind of idea with his community to use cultural exchange for mutual understanding, and the result is something he probably didn't expect, is that over 62 years there are 48 Nobel Prize winners. So it's interesting to see how one sole man with one sole idea can change the world. And this is what I think was that this, significance and singularity are about. And maybe also, why did I always choose hands as visuals throughout this whole presentation? I think hands are to reach out to the other. Art is about the other, and as this morning Jos said, it's also about the viewer, it's how to look at things, and art is always at a certain point viewed by somebody else. And this is why I think art is about humanities, and the symbol of the hands that reach, and at some point hands can never reach completely, but they can stay parallel. This is